afternoon, wherever you are, and whenever you're watching this live stream. And in today's live, I want to talk all about what makes up 8 key factors of excellence. So yesterday, I talked about what is the difference between uh, excellence and almost called imperfect and perfection. So obviously, I will link that in the comments for you to go and watch if you've not had the opportunity to do so as of yet. So the 8 keys of excellence are integrity, failure leads to success, speak with good purpose. This is it, and I'll explain what that is in a second. Commitment, ownership, flexibility, and balance. So if we touch on the first one of integrity, is an alignment to one's action with our values. So this is where our gut plays a good uh, service for us because that's our secondary brain, and obviously I can go into that at a later date if people want to know more about that in terms of why I believe it to be the second brain. But our body will tell us when something is off, be it our hair on our arms stands up to attention. We get a gut reaction about somebody, so that's obviously an action that is relating to what our values, our ethics, and our morals are. So the body's telling us that this is a bit off, this is a bit iffy. So a person of integrity consistently follows a strict code of personal values in a way they demonstrate moral excellence. Do what you know is right. The second one is failure leads to success. And I explained this yesterday that somebody that is a perfectionist views failure as they're in if they're inferior to if they don't obviously live up to a high expectation, which is it can produce results, but in terms of if we lived under fear or things of that nature, obviously we would resent the person, and obviously resenting oneself is not great because if you're condescending yourself day in day out, it's not going to be very helpful. So when a person utilizes fear in order to it to lead to success, they see failures as a means to being feedback or ultimately positive criticism. We can learn from mistakes and we make the changes needed to be more successful in the future. The third one is speak with good purpose. So this is obviously being kind to yourself. Be positive with your language or our language. When there's a problem, avoid gossip by communicating with the person directly. Obviously, adults have a problem with this because due to the fact of envy, jealousy, and maybe getting passed over by somebody else, it infuriates people that, hey, they're going to gossip that, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes to undermine the other individual. So that's not very kind. And if you're willing to do that to somebody else, I can hazard a guess that potentially you are not talking well about yourself as well because they go hand in hand. And I can talk from experience a little bit because I have done things like that. And I'm not proud of it, but as in at times even in my current guise of competing for North Wales Knights, I deemed I should be starting over somebody else because I were better than them athletically and not willing to put in the work when it came to other things like getting in the gym and putting more shots up, because ultimately that's what's the most important in that sport of basketball, is to put the basket the ball in the basket. So I touched upon at the beginning of the video. This is it. So I'm gonna undraw the curtains and share what that is now. So it's focusing our attention on the present moment. Make whatever we are doing at any given time the most important. So I believe, and I'm talking from experience as a coach, that be it if people come to speak to me or we have a conversation in the message, people are either fixated on the future or they're fixated on the past, and they're not able to be content with living right now. So what I mean by that is they're fearful or don't want to comprehend the future because it scares them in some shape or form. So that uncertainty is I don't like that I have total control over it. Thus I dictate because I've had previous experiences of failure. This is obviously where it leads to failure. I'm scared of the future because of what's transpired in the past. On the flip side of the other one, of the person living in the past, is they're being nostalgic. So you might know somebody that might reminisce of their heyday in high school, in college, uh, maybe their former life in another profession. That person's not living in the present; they're living in the past, and in order to actually be the best version of yourself, you need to live in the right here, right now. Because if I can live in the present, I ultimately create the future that I want to envision. It's not a reality, but I've got this picture in my head of what the future looks like. If I focus on the here and now, I can make that more come to fruition than if I focus on being in the future or being stuck in the past. So we'll come to number 5 is commitment. So I talked about motivation and willpower the other week, of people deem that is the culprit when they don't get from here to here with their result, when in fact it's probably down to this one and 2 others of being commitment, discipline, and probably consistency. So what is commitment? Is doing what you set out to do in the first place. So it's a commitment to yourself in terms of, what do I need to do in order to get from here to here? I've obviously framed it as your why, because obviously why is it important for you to achieve what you've set out to do, which is commitment. We have to be disciplined to follow through with our commitments to others and to ourselves, even when it is challenging. So people need to be a little bit more discriminative to how they're disciplined, because some people are disciplined in one aspect of their life and maybe a little bit less so in others. But that's not saying you can't upskill that particular skill. Number 6 is taking ownership. So taking responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your actions. Ownership is knowing that we can't always control what happens, but we can control how we respond, which I talked about yesterday in terms of how did I view it? Because you've got more control on, because if I break it down a little bit further in terms of your words towards others, you would take ownership if somebody was bad mouthing you. You'd be feel, obviously you take affirmative action with that. Whereas maybe if you're not so in the moment and self aware, you might not catch yourself in terms of falling into negative thoughts, negative feelings, and negative language to yourself. So obviously, as a result of that, is you're gonna your body's gonna respond in kind to obviously have a negative outcome or action that you probably don't want to happen. So this is a great quote. Ownership, I'm responsible for me, no excuses. Come to number 7 is flexibility or adaptability. Change our actions to get the desired outcome. Flexibility allows us multiple ways to get the result. Flexibility, I solve problems. So when you fall into, I'm going to combine these two, not taking ownership and not staying in the present, this is where you get fixated on the problem as opposed to, even though you have an intent to get a result, you fixate and manifest the problem to be greater than it actually is. So if it was another person to view the exact same problem, they would probably give you a different perspective and a different scenario. How do you solve it? So by being flexible and adaptable to a desired outcome, because there's multiple ways, and I describe it as a metaphorical wall, as you have 4 choices. You can go around the wall, left or right. You can go over the wall. You can go under it. Technically it's 5, but we'll say 4 because obviously left and right is the same. Or you can go proverbial that a lot of the athletes would do is go through that bad boy. That's flexibility. That's adaptability. As hey, the problem is, I don't know how thick the wall is, but that's not a big deal because I want what's in the prize that's on the other side of that wall more than I'm worried about this problem. And then finally, the 8th and final one of the 8 keys to excellence is balance. To make the choices in our lives that provide lasting fulfillment. Inner happiness comes from making choices that fill up our body, mind, and spirit. So everybody's heard, or I would assume, I've heard about, filling up one's cup. Obviously, this is empty, so it's not a very good example. But as in, if we looked at balance as fulfillment, inner happiness, and looking at mind, body, and spirit, if this bad boy is empty and this is your energy, you can't give other people anything because you can't fill up their cup because it's non-existent. If you've got nothing to give, you need to obviously pull back. So there's a balance. Be it, you can look at it work-life balance. You need to look at, are you an introvert, extrovert? That's one way of looking at it. That people that are extroverted find it easier to go into situation because they feed off other people. I'm not saying in a bad way, but as in a retrospectively positive way, that they get their buzz from being around other people. So if you are probably like me, I fall probably somewhere in between, but if I'm introverted on a particular time, this thing's empty, I need to obviously go and recharge. So that would be my balance because I need to be able to show up the best possible way that I can for myself and then give to others. So by utilizing those 8 key points, you go from being somebody that's seeking perfection, which would be unattainable in all those 8 because you're living up to a standard that's here, and if you fall short of that, it's not a success. Whereas if you go in for excellence, which is the best that you can do on a given day, by implementing those 8 things, you'll be able to do it in a better way. So I'm going to share a comment real quick. Okay, so we'll watch that. So that's all for Tuesday. I'm going to go get ready to go to training myself. I hope you've enjoyed today's live. Let me know in the comments what you thought. And obviously, see you all again tomorrow. All right, take care. All the best.